I was supposed to have been in court at 10 a.m., but actually I was heard at 9 a.m. So every time the door opened up, I would look to see who was coming through, thinking family would be there, supporters, what have you. But that wasn't the case. I was in there by myself. And the judge said, well, okay, we're gonna move on to sentence, blah, blah, blah. I sentenced you to 50 to life for this, 50 to life for that. I looked at my lawyer, I said, what is he talking about? I'm a 16-year-old. What are you saying, 50 to life? And he kept going. I sentenced you to 50 to life for this, 50 to life for that, 50 to life for this, 100 and some years for this, 20 some years for this. And I'm like, everyone in this courtroom is crazy. 50 to life. I only have one life.
In the 1990s, fear and anger over violent crime led to a sharp increase in incarceration. That included sentencing large numbers of juveniles to life in adult prisons without parole.
This country was one of the, I think maybe one or two countries, if not the only country, where a 13-year-old could be sentenced to life without parole.
A couple of years ago, we at Milbank learned about these cases. Cases where they're juveniles who were sentenced to life without parole. And a result of some Supreme Court decisions, they had the opportunity to be resentenced to essentially life with parole.
Prisoners in Kent County now have a second chance at freedom.
What are the common themes with these clients?
Common themes, poverty is probably the most common thing. These are almost all juveniles who had very difficult childhoods.
Several years ago, we formed a relationship with the Equal Justice Initiative, which is an organization out of Alabama led by Bryan Stevenson. They brought to us an idea for a series of projects in Virginia related to youth who'd been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Edward Sims is one of those youth. There are numerous other youth.
Nobody should ever have happened to them what happened to Edward Sims. He really is a poster child for some of the problems in our criminal justice system. He really is somebody who fell through the cracks. And I think anybody who hears his story will be outraged.
Single parent household, no father. I was a product of a child raising a child. Nothing just seemed to be right, ever. I left home when I was about 12. Sometime after that, my aunt got custody of me and things changed. She and I had a different dynamic. But when she went to prison, the dynamics completely changed. Everything just changed. The framework changed. We were left to just basically fend for ourselves, so to speak. So I left. I was on the streets.
In the 80s, a three-strikes law had been implemented and had been enacted by the Virginia State Legislature, signed into law that basically said, if you commit 3 felonies, you then become automatically ineligible for parole. That had been interpreted in a way that allowed people like Edward at the time, who had committed 3 felony offenses consecutively, but without being convicted or without serving any time in between, to fall within this particular three-strikes law and then on that basis become parole ineligible.
At 16, he was told by a judge, you are irredeemable. You will never be capable of being an upstanding citizen who's worthy of liberty.
I remember when they dragged me out of that courtroom, I was feet up in a horizontal position with my fingers digging into the carpet, crying, screaming, and I was alone.
People are outraged when they hear what happened here and what he has endured, considering how young he was when he went to prison and how long he's been in prison. He's been in prison for 32 years from the time he was 16. It's a death sentence. Life in prison without parole is a death sentence.
When I walked into the state penitentiary, they call it the Wall, 500 Spring Street. It doesn't exist anymore. I had a box on my hand, shackles on my feet, and cuffs on my wrist. And when I walked across the yard, out of the Sally Court, it reminds me of the sound of Rikers gates closing. It's just a metallic clinking until it hits the ground. And you stop and you turn, and it scares you. At that moment, you realize that there's absolutely no one here to protect you.
In many cases, what you see is juveniles who, when they enter the system, they're kids, they're in adult prison, they're attacked, so they act out. Often they act out so that they are placed in solitary confinement or in protective custody just to get away from the adult population and the abuse.
Everyone on my wing was a murderer. I was the only kid in there for robbery. Survival was everything. It was the only thing.
When you throw away a child in prison, it is just a truly inhumane act, because what we know is that young people, no matter how terrible the crime might be, young people have an incredible capacity for change. And it really shouldn't be surprising to us because, you know, they were convicted of crimes for things that they did when they were teenagers. And now you're looking at 40-year-old men, 45-year-old men and women that are just different people from that time, much like all of us, I think, would feel looking back on our teenage selves.
I had a dream that I was in a box and I was trying to get through a wall in the box. I couldn't get through it. I dropped my shoulder into it. I pushed, I dug into it as much as I could. I just got exhausted from it. I just sat down looking at the wall and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this wall, but I give up, man. And all of a sudden it was just like counterclockwise, like an airflow. And I was like, you know, just paying attention to the flow of air. And I was like, maybe if I just go with the flow of things for a change, it won't be so difficult. And then all of a sudden the wall just disappeared. And I said, I finally figured it out. I've been doing things my way and it's been a selfish act the whole time. Now maybe if I change my approach, things will change too.
He served 32 years in prison, and during that time, the last 20 years, he did not have any infractions. He has been a model inmate. He has been the leader of the honor pod at the jail, and he has done other things while behind bars to try to make an impact on the community. The Virginia State Parole Board made a change in the way that it interprets the three strikes law, and as a result, Edward received a letter that he would become parole eligible.
We had a lot to work with because Edward had submitted this parole packet that was above and beyond anything I've ever seen. We focused on really going through everything he had done for the past 32 years while in prison, from the mentor programs that he had been a part of, the community service that he had engaged in, and really highlighted those items in the packet for the parole board so they could see what a wonderful individual he is to himself and the community.
He was the same age when he went into prison as my son is now. And he's almost my age now. And I just thought about all of that, and I look at this packet of, you know, him pleading about all the things that he's done to change his life. And it just, I couldn't get through that packet because I just felt like he shouldn't have to be asking to get out at this stage. He's done his time, and he should be able to get out without begging for his life. And he's been in prison for 32 years from the time he was 16. That just is, it's mind-boggling.
They polished up my parole packet, they resubmitted it, they just took it to another level. They were professional, they were warm, they were family. It wasn't just a legal counselor, they became my friends. So when we went to the parole board, we actually had accomplished something no one else had done. According to the parole board, we made parole in 3 weeks.
What we're hoping to do is to be at the correctional facility on the other side and to welcome him into the community once he steps through those gates. That's our plan.
You only get a chance to do it one time. Excuse me. Okay. Huh? Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you. So y'all gonna eat without me? Y'all gonna eat without me?
I told you. Y'all think I was crazy. I told you
Really?
he was here.
Don't get no love?
I told you he was here.
Y'all can't fool me. I knew he was here. I just told my manager about that. I said, man, he here. Man. Yeah, what?
It really was the best experience I've ever had as an attorney. It felt like an out-of-body experience. And to know that I had a small part in this man's 32-year fight for justice, it's just an honor that I can't describe with words.
That was a piece of cake and everything. Getting out was the happiest moment of my life. I was so relieved. I could actually sleep in a bed, you know. I could actually just taste food. I could think of all these things that I couldn't even think of the moments before. So it was definitely the happiest moment of my life to get my life back 33 years later.
We needed to take a look at young people and treat them as young people, and therefore treat them differently. They were not adults. Young people are less culpable. They have this incredible capacity for change. And not only was morally wrong, but it didn't make sense as a justice system to keep doing this. And this was backed up by the Supreme Court decisions in Miller and Montgomery. This is now the law of the land. And they relied on brain science to help make that determination. So it's not just out of some sympathy for young people. It's based on science. And it's based on our evolving notions of how people should be treated and what a fair justice system looks like. What we have seen is those individuals that have been released are doing incredibly well.
It's important for people at firms like Milbank to come in and provide representation for folks who need it. You can go in front of the parole board and you could have a model record institutionally, but you have to have a plan with what you're going to do when you get out. So you need attorneys to help you put together a plan that is compelling.
The Louisiana Center for Children's Rights has been working on this issue of juvenile life without parole for over 20 years. We went out, we found private law firms like Milbank to take some of these cases and bring additional resources to the table.
You know, the legal profession has an obligation to help others who can't afford our services and to make sure that they have an even chance at getting justice as well. We're working on cases in Louisiana, we're working on cases in Virginia, and we're going to continue to expand our role in this area because this is an area that our lawyers feel passionately about, and they feel like there's a real injustice in this area.
There are literally hundreds of juveniles who've been sentenced to life without parole in a state like Louisiana. You get to do something for them and with them that they really haven't had ever. Have the benefit of, you know, lawyers who are going to give everything, provide resources, time, effort, money into their cases in a way that, you know, they haven't been able to experience. I am working real hard for the day that I can see my client walk out of prison.
In this country, we need a change in attitude. We need people to give men and women who've spent time behind bars the chance that they need to show that they have changed. We need to give them jobs, right? We need to give them housing, and we need to give them hope and show them some mercy.
I look back on my crimes, and for 33 years, I've regretted every day of it. The biggest regret is that I've never had an opportunity to tell these people I was sorry. If I could change things, I would. But the only thing I can change now is the future, because I have an opportunity to create it. I may not be able to change what happened in the past, but if I can stop someone else from recreating or reliving what I did, then I'm actually saying I'm sorry in action as opposed to words.